7 years. That's how long I built her empire in silence while she took every bow. Then she thanked her lover on stage and didn't even glance my way. The audience clapped. I walked out. Her phone started buzzing. Funding gone. Sponsors fled. Empire crumbling. She thought I was just her husband. I was the foundation. And I just removed every brick. My name is Preston Kane. I'm 45 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been married to Simone Kane, founder and CEO of Apex Talent Solutions, a tech recruiting platform that connects startups with top-tier engineering talent. Beautiful concept. Brilliant execution. Except here's what nobody knows. I built the entire financial infrastructure that made it possible. Before Simone, I was married to Claire, a pediatric surgeon with a level head and zero tolerance for games. We had Miles together. He's 18 now, heading to college in the fall. Claire and I divorced when Miles was 6, not because we hated each other, but because our careers pulled us in different directions. She wanted Boston. I needed Silicon Valley. We stayed friends, split custody fairly, and Miles grew up knowing both his parents loved him. Clean, mature, the way adults should handle things. Simone came into my life at a venture capital mixer in Palo Alto. She was 36, recently divorced, and hungry. Not just for success, for validation. She had 2 kids from her first marriage, Avery, who was 12 at the time, and Easton, who was 10. Their father, Gregory Hughes, was some mid-level marketing director who checked out emotionally years before the divorce papers were signed. I fell for her drive, her vision, the way she could walk into a room and make people believe in something that didn't exist yet. What I didn't realize was that she'd eventually do the same thing to our marriage. Make people believe in a version of reality that had nothing to do with the truth. When we got married, I was a managing partner at Cornerstone Ventures, a mid-tier VC fund specializing in early-stage tech. Simone had just launched Apex out of a WeWork space in San Francisco. She had the idea, the pitch deck, and about 6 months of runway. What she didn't have was the back end, the legal structure, the compliance framework, the investor relations, the boring stuff that doesn't photograph well for Forbes, but keeps the lights on. So I built it. Quietly. I set up the holding company, Sentinel Capital Group, that funneled strategic investments into Apex without raising red flags. I structured the cap table so her equity looked clean. I negotiated vendor contracts that gave her favorable terms without anyone knowing I was on the other side of the table. I was the invisible hand that turned her vision into something fundable. And she let me. Hell, she encouraged it. Back then, she'd curl up next to me on the couch after the kids were asleep and say things like, "I couldn't do this without you." Or, "You're the reason this works." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But somewhere between Series A and Series B, between the TechCrunch feature and the Forbes 30 Under 40 nomination, I became infrastructure. Necessary, but forgettable. Like plumbing. Nobody thanks the plumbing. 6 months ago, she hired Chase Garrett. 30 years old, Harvard MBA, expensive watch, and a resume that looked a little too good for a VP of Strategic Partnerships role. I didn't think much of it at first. Simone needed someone to handle the brand side while she focused on scaling. Made sense. Except Chase wasn't just handling partnerships. He was handling her calendar, her travel, her late-night strategy sessions that somehow always required wine and never included me. I wasn't stupid. I just wasn't ready to admit what I was seeing. 2 weeks ago, my son Miles came to me. We were grabbing lunch near his campus. He's finishing up his senior year at a private academy in Menlo Park. He looked uncomfortable, kept pushing his food around his plate. Finally, he said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I put down my fork. "What's wrong?" "It's about Simone," Miles said quietly. "I was at that startup networking thing last week. The one at the Rosewood. I saw her there with that guy, Chase. They were. I don't know, Dad. It didn't look right." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Didn't look right how? Miles hesitated. They were standing really close, laughing, and when they thought nobody was looking, he touched her lower back. Like, not a professional thing. I nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me, son. Are you going to do something?" he asked. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I already am. The Pacific Tech Innovation Awards took place at the Fairmont in San Francisco. Black tie, champagne towers, and enough venture capital in one room to fund a small country. Simone had been nominated for Visionary Founder of the Year. She'd been preparing for weeks, rehearsing her speech in the mirror, trying on different gowns like she was walking the Oscars red carpet. I helped her zip up the dress that evening. Midnight blue silk, probably cost more than my first car. She barely glanced at me. "You're in the third row," she said, scrolling through her phone. "VIPs and sponsors are up front." I adjusted my cufflinks. "Third row's fine." She didn't hear me. She was already out the door. At the ceremony, I sat exactly where she'd assigned me. Third row, right side, next to a couple of angel investors I'd worked with years ago. They made small talk. I smiled and nodded, but my attention was on the stage. When they called her name, the room erupted. Simone floated to the podium in that blue dress, every inch the visionary they were celebrating. She gave her speech, polished, practiced, perfect, talked about building something from nothing, about trusting the process, about the people who believed in her vision. Then she paused, smiled warmly at the audience, and said the words that would change everything. "I want to thank my real partner," Simone said, her voice soft with manufacturer emotion. "The one who's been with me through every late night, every tough decision, every pivot. You know who you are." She looked directly at Chase Garrett, sitting in the front row. He smirked, raised his glass slightly. Not once did she look at me. I sat there for exactly 3 seconds. Then I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked toward the exit. Slowly, deliberately. Nobody noticed. They were too busy applauding her courage, her authenticity. I was halfway to the lobby when I heard heels clicking behind me. "Mr. Kane." It was Simone's assistant, Lena, breathless and panicked. "Her phone, it's blowing up. The CEO of Weston Capital is freaking out." I stopped, turned slightly. "About what?" Lena's hand shook as she held out the phone. The screen was lit up with messages. "CEO Weston Capital, 9:17 p.m. What the hell just happened?" "CEO Weston Capital, 9:18 p.m. Major sponsor just pulled out. It's your husband's company." "CEO Weston Capital, 9:19 p.m. What did you do?" I looked at the messages, then at Lena. "Looks urgent," I said calmly. "You should probably tell her." Then I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. Behind me, I could still hear the applause. 2 months earlier, I'd sat in a conference room at Sentinel Capital Group with 4 other board members. The room smelled like leather and old money. I slid a folder across the polished mahogany table. "What are we looking at?" asked Richard Paulson, one of my longtime partners. "A motion to terminate all sponsorship agreements with Apex Talent Solutions," I said flatly. "Effective immediately after their Q3 earnings call." Richard opened the folder, scanned the documents. "On what grounds?" "Clause 19B, I replied. "Failure to disclose material conflicts of interest involving board-adjacent personnel." Another partner, Susan Drexler, leaned forward. "You're saying Simone violated the disclosure agreement?" "She hired Chase Garrett 6 months ago," I explained. "Gave him VP-level authority over client relations and strategic partnerships. What she didn't disclose is that Chase has direct financial ties to 3 of our competitor funds. He's been feeding them proprietary client data since week 2. The room went quiet. "You have proof?" Susan asked. I pulled out my laptop, turned it toward them. Email threads, bank transfers, meeting logs, all meticulously documented. "She signed the MSA 7 years ago," I continued. Paragraph 12, subsection 3. "Any employee with decision-making authority over accounts tied to Sentinel funding must be disclosed within 30 days of hiring." She never filed the paperwork. Richard whistled low. "That's a kill shot." "It's compliance," I corrected. "Nothing personal." Susan studied me. "Preston, you're married to her." "I'm aware," I said, "but I'm also a fiduciary to this fund." She violated the terms. "The penalty is withdrawal of support." The vote was unanimous. I closed my laptop and stood. "I want the execution clean. No press leaks. No public statements. Just a legal withdrawal citing contractual noncompliance." "When do we pull the trigger?" Richard asked. 2 months, I said. "Let her have her award ceremony. Let her give her speech. Then we move." Richard grinned. "Cold, Preston." "No," I replied. "Strategic." That night, I went home and kissed Simone on the forehead. She was on a conference call, didn't even notice I'd been gone. I poured myself a drink and opened my laptop. There was still work to do. The morning after the award ceremony, Simone's phone didn't stop ringing. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she stumbled in, still in her robe, eyes red from crying or rage. Hard to tell which. "Preston, what the hell is happening?" she demanded, thrusting her phone at me. I glanced at the screen. Email after email. Missed calls from investors, board members, her COO. I handed it back to her. "Looks like you got a busy day," I said calmly, pouring my coffee. Sentinel pulled out, she said, her voice rising. "Weston Capital called an emergency review. 3 vendors are freezing our accounts." "What did you do?" I turned to face her, leaned against the counter. "I didn't do anything, Simone. You did." Her face flushed. "What are you talking about?" "Clause 19B of your MSA with Sentinel," I replied evenly. "You hired Chase without disclosing his conflicts of interest. That's a breach. They had every right to withdraw. You're the one who," she started, then stopped herself. "The one who what?" I asked. "Set up the fund, built the structure, made sure you had clean financing." "Yes, I did all that." "And you signed every document agreeing to the terms." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You planned this." "No," I said. "I prepared for it. There's a difference. You made the choice to violate the agreement. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." Her hand shook. "We can fix this. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I said quietly. "It was a pattern, and I'm done being infrastructure you don't acknowledge." I set down my coffee cup and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "To see my lawyer," I replied. "I filed for divorce 3 days ago. You'll be served this afternoon." I heard something shatter behind me, probably her phone hitting the wall. I didn't turn around. Outside, my car was already waiting. Miles was sitting in the passenger seat. I'd texted him earlier, asked if he wanted to grab breakfast. "How'd it go?" he asked as I slid into the driver's seat. "About as expected," I said. Miles nodded. "Good. She didn't deserve you, Dad." I started the engine. "Let's get pancakes." 3 days after the divorce papers were served, I got a call from an unexpected source. "Avery, Simone's 19-year-old daughter." "Preston," she said quietly. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you." We met at a coffee shop near Stanford, where she was finishing her sophomore year. She looked tired, older than her years. When I sat down, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I knew," Avery said, staring into her latte. "About Chase. About what Mom was doing." I stayed quiet, let her talk. "I saw texts on her phone about 2 months ago," she continued. "She left it on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, but they were right there. Him telling her how amazing she was, how she deserved better than." She trailed off, looked at me. "Better than you. Why didn't you say anything?" I asked gently. "Because she's my mom," Avery said, her voice breaking slightly. "And I wanted to believe she wouldn't actually go through with it. That she'd remember what you did for her, for all of us." She wiped her eyes. But then she gave that speech, called him her real partner. And I realized she'd been rewriting history for months. I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "You're not responsible for her choices, Avery." "I know," she said. "But I am responsible for mine. That's why I'm calling Dad." "Gregory?" I asked, surprised. She nodded. "He's been clean for 3 years. Has a good job now. Stable place in Sacramento. He's been asking to reconnect. I think I'm going to move in with him for a while. Get some distance from Mom." "That's a good choice," I said. "He's your father. He deserves a chance to prove he's changed." Avery looked at me seriously. "You deserve better than what she did to you. I wanted you to know that. And I wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For paying my tuition last semester when Mom's accounts got frozen," she said softly. "The bursar's office told me it came from an anonymous donor, but I know it was you." I didn't confirm or deny it, just smiled. "You're going to be okay, Avery," I said. "You're smart, you're honest, and you know the difference between right and wrong. That's more than a lot of people can say." She hugged me before she left. "Take care of yourself, Preston." "You too, kid." As I watched her walk away, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not everyone in this mess was lost. 2 weeks after the divorce filing, the real damage started showing. I heard it through mutual connections first. Apex Talent Solutions was bleeding clients. The TechCrunch article came next. Former rising star faces crisis as funding evaporates. The piece was brutal. It detailed the Sentinel withdrawal, quoted unnamed sources about ethical lapses and undisclosed conflicts. One paragraph stood out. Industry insiders suggest that Simone Kane's rapid rise was built less on innovation and more on infrastructure provided by her estranged husband, Preston Kane, a veteran VC strategist whose name rarely appeared in her success narrative. My phone buzzed. Claire, my ex-wife. Just read the article. She texted. You okay? Fine, I replied. How's Miles? Proud as dad. She wrote back. We both are. That same afternoon, Simone's COO resigned. Then her head of sales. By Friday, 3 more executives had jumped ship. I wasn't surprised. Nobody wants to be on a sinking vessel. Easton, Simone's 17-year-old son, showed up in my office unannounced. Security called up, asked if I wanted them to send him away. Let him up, I said. He walked in, hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I don't have long. Mom doesn't know I'm here. What do you need? I asked. Nothing, he said quickly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For how she treated you. For how I treated you. I was a jerk. I took your help for granted. I leaned back in my chair. You're 17. That's pretty much the job description. He almost smiled. Yeah, well, still. You didn't deserve what she did. No, I agreed. I didn't. But I'm handling it. Easton shifted his weight. She's losing everything, isn't she? Probably, I said honestly. But that's not on you to fix. He nodded slowly. Dad, Gregory. He reached out, asked if I wanted to spend the summer with him. You should, I said. Give him a chance. What about you? Easton asked. Are you going to be okay? I stood up, walked around the desk, and put a hand on his shoulder. I'm going to be fine, Easton. Better than fine. You focus on yourself. He left looking lighter somehow. Good. He was a good kid trapped in a bad situation. He deserved a way out. 5 weeks after the ceremony, the other shoe dropped. I was in my office when Richard Paulson called. Turn on CNBC, he said. You're going to want to see this. I pulled up the stream. Breaking news banner. SEC launches investigation into tech exec for securities fraud. The face on the screen was Chase Garrett. The reporter's voice cut through. Chase Garrett, former VP at Apex Talent Solutions, has been arrested on charges of insider trading and securities fraud. Federal investigators allege Garrett used confidential client information to conduct illegal trades through offshore accounts, profiting over $2 million in the past 6 months. I leaned back in my chair, watched the footage of Chase being led out of his apartment in handcuffs. He looked smaller than I remembered, less confident. Did you know about this? Richard asked over the phone. I suspected he was dirty, I said. I didn't know the extent. But I made sure the SEC got copies of all his email correspondence with our competitor funds 3 weeks ago. Richard laughed. You're a piece of work, Preston. I'm thorough. I corrected. The news got better. The report continued. Investigators are also questioning Simone Kane, Garrett's former employer, about her knowledge of the scheme. While no charges have been filed against Kane, sources say she's cooperating with authorities. I turned off the stream. My phone buzzed immediately. Simone's name on the screen. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Finally, she texted, Please, Preston. I need to talk to you. This is insane. I didn't know what he was doing. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, You made your choices. Live with him. I blocked her number. That evening, Miles came over for dinner. Claire had dropped him off. We were doing a joint thing now, trying to show him that divorce didn't have to be toxic. Saw the news about Chase. Miles said as we grilled steaks on my balcony. That's wild. Karma works in mysterious ways. I replied, flipping a steak. Mom called, he added. Claire, I mean. She wanted you to know she's proud of how you handled all this. I smiled. Tell her I said thanks. She also said you should start dating again, Miles said with a grin. Says you've been single long enough. I laughed. I'll take that under advisement. Miles grew serious. Dad, are you happy? Like really happy? I thought about it. The past 2 months have been chaos. Lawyers, paperwork, reporters calling for comments. But underneath it all, there was something I hadn't felt in years. Yeah, I said honestly. I am. I'm free, Miles. And that's worth more than anything else. He nodded, satisfied. Good. You deserve it. We ate dinner, talked about his college plans, his summer internship. Normal stuff. The kind of conversations I'd missed while I was busy building someone else's empire. Later, after Miles left, I sat on the balcony with a glass of whiskey and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Simone was probably panicking, calling lawyers, trying to salvage what was left of her reputation. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. 6 weeks post-ceremony, the inevitable happened. Apex Talent Solutions filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The announcement came on a Thursday morning, buried in the business section of the Wall Street Journal. I read it over coffee. My phone rang. Susan Drexler from Sentinel. "Did you see?" she asked. "Just reading it now," I replied. "She's trying to restructure," Susan said. "Wants to keep the company alive. Her lawyers reached out to us about potential bridge financing. And I asked, already knowing the answer. We declined," Susan said flatly. "Unanimously. Nobody wants to touch it. Too much reputational risk after the Chase Garrett scandal." "Smart," I said. "There's more," Susan continued. Her former employees filed a class action lawsuit. 32 people claiming unpaid wages and benefits. They're saying she misused company funds for personal expenses, designer clothes, first-class travel, gifts for Garrett. I whistled low. "That's going to hurt." "Her lawyer called me yesterday," Susan added. "Want to know if you'd be willing to testify on her behalf. Character witness type thing." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That they'd have better luck finding water in the Sahara," Susan said dryly. I smiled. "Appreciate that." "Preston," Susan said, her tone shifting. "You did the right thing. Walking away, protecting the fund, protecting yourself. A lot of men wouldn't have had the spine for it." "Just business," I said. "No," Susan corrected. "It was survival. There's a difference." After I hung up, I pulled up my email. One new message stood out. Subject line, "Acquisition Opportunity." It was from Daniel Forrester, CEO of Talent Bridge Group, one of Apex's competitors. "Preston, word on the street is Apex is going under. We're interested in acquiring their client database and proprietary algorithm. Thought you might know someone who could facilitate. Let's talk." "Daniel." I stared at the email for a long moment. Then I picked up the phone and called Daniel. "Forrester," he answered. "It's Preston Kane," I said. "I got your email. Let's set up a meeting." "Excellent," Daniel said. "When works for you?" "Tomorrow," I replied. "And Daniel, I want this acquisition structured through Sentinel. We're going to do this clean, legal, and profitable." "Understood," he said. "Looking forward to it." I hung up and leaned back in my chair. Simone had built Apex with my infrastructure, my funding, my strategy. She tried to erase me from the story. Now I was going to sell her legacy to the highest bidder. Poetic justice had never tasted sweeter. 3 months after her world collapsed, Simone showed up at my office. Security called up, asked if they should turn her away. "Let her come up," I said. "I'll give her 5 minutes." She walked in looking nothing like the woman who'd stood on that stage. No designer dress, no perfect hair. Just jeans, a plain sweater, and exhaustion etched into every line of her face. The confidence that once filled every room she entered had evaporated completely. "Preston," she said quietly, "thank you for seeing me." I didn't invite her to sit, just leaned against my desk, arms crossed, watching her with the same detachment I'd used to evaluate a bad investment. "You've got 5 minutes. I made a mistake," she began, voice shaking. "A terrible mistake. I was arrogant, stupid, and I hurt the one person who actually gave a damn about me, who built everything I took credit for." I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. "Chase is going to prison for 4 years," she continued. "The SEC froze everything. Every account, every asset. The company's gone. My reputation is destroyed. I lost the house, lost my clients, lost my team. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Daly City and working temp jobs to pay rent. And," I asked flatly, "and I'm asking for help," she said, tears starting. "Not money, not funding, just advice. A way forward. You always knew how to fix things, how to structure deals. I don't know what to do, Preston. I'm completely lost." I studied her for a long moment. Part of me, a very small part, almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You want my advice?" I said. "Here it is. You built your empire on a foundation you didn't understand and didn't respect. You took credit for work you didn't do, erased the people who made you successful, and threw away a real partnership because you wanted the spotlight all to yourself. And now you're facing the natural consequences of those choices." Her face crumbled. I know all of that. I've had 3 months to think about nothing else. But please, there has to be a way to." "There isn't," I interrupted. "Not with me. You made your choice on that stage when you thanked your real partner and looked at Chase instead of me. You chose the image over the substance. You chose the applause over the truth. Now you get to live with that decision. Preston, please, she whispered, desperation raw in her voice. I'm begging you. I have nowhere else to turn. The answer is no, Simone, I said firmly. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not your infrastructure. I'm not the guy who fixes your problems while you take the bows. That version of me is gone. You killed it. She stood there, tears streaming down her face. I loved you. I really did. No, I said quietly. You loved what I could do for you. You loved the security, the structure, the doors I opened. But you never loved me. There's a difference, and deep down, you know it. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Nothing left to say. She turned and left without another word. I watched her go, felt absolutely nothing, and returned to my work. That evening, Miles called. Mom told me Simone came to see you today. Claire had apparently heard through the grapevine. News traveled fast in our circles. Yeah, I said. She wanted help. Did you give it to her? He asked. No, I replied. She made her bed. Time to sleep in it. Good, Miles said firmly. She didn't deserve you, Dad. She never did. I know, son, I said, feeling a quiet pride in how my kid had turned out. I know. 11 months later, I stood in a different ballroom at a different ceremony. The Silicon Valley Innovation Leadership Awards, held at the St. Regis in San Francisco. This time, I wasn't sitting in the third row watching someone else claim credit for my work. I was on stage. Sentinel Capital Group had been recognized for strategic investment excellence, an award that acknowledged the firms quietly building the infrastructure that made innovation possible. The ones that did the real work while founders grab headlines. Richard Paulson accepted on behalf of the board, but he made sure to call me out specifically. Preston Kane, Richard said into the microphone, gesturing for me to stand, represents everything this industry should value. Integrity, strategic vision, and the wisdom to build something lasting rather than something loud. He's the architect behind more successful ventures than most people realize, and he's never once asked for credit. That changes tonight. The applause was warm, genuine, sustained. I stood, nodded to the audience, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, truly recognized. Not as someone's husband, not as background infrastructure, as myself. After the ceremony, I found Miles and Claire waiting near the lobby. Claire had come as a friend. Her fiancé, another surgeon named David, stood beside her. No awkwardness, no tension, just adults who'd moved on and genuinely wanted the best for each other. Congrats, Dad, Miles said, pulling me into a hug. That was awesome. I recorded the whole thing. Thanks for coming, I said, meaning it. Claire smiled warmly. You deserve this, Preston. All of it. I'm genuinely happy for you. Appreciate that, I said. As we walked toward the exit, someone called my name. I turned. It was Avery, Simone's daughter. She looked healthy, vibrant, a senior at Stanford now, clearly thriving. Preston, she said, slightly breathless from hurrying over. I saw the news about the award. Congratulations. That's incredible. Thanks, Avery, I said warmly. How are you doing? Really good, she said. Living with Dad in Sacramento. Just got accepted to UCSF's medical program. Life's finally stable, you know. That's what matters most, I said. Your dad must be proud. He is, she said, then hesitated. I thought you should know. Mom's working as a regional manager at a small recruiting firm in Oakland now, making about $60,000 a year. It's humbling for her, but she's surviving. I nodded slowly. Good. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, even if they have to start from the bottom. She asks about you sometimes. Avery said carefully, watching my reaction. I'm sure she does, I replied evenly. But that chapter's closed, Avery. For both of us. What matters is that you and Easton are doing well. She smiled with obvious relief. We are. Thanks to you helping with my tuition when everything fell apart. I never properly thanked you for that. You just did, I said. Now go build that medical career. Later, at dinner with Miles, Claire, and David, I raised a glass of wine. To new beginnings and second chances. They clinked glasses with me. To new beginnings, they echoed. I looked around the table. My son who'd grown into a thoughtful young man, my ex-wife who'd become a genuine friend, the life I'd carefully, deliberately rebuilt from the ashes. Simone had tried to erase me from her story, tried to make me invisible while she claimed the spotlight. Instead, she'd freed me to write my own narrative. And mine, I realized with quiet satisfaction, was just getting started.